I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine walking into a church and seeing your own funeral. Your photograph, framed in gold, surrounded by white lilies. A hall full of people in black, dabbing their eyes. And at the front, your husband, the man you loved for 12 years, weeping into a handkerchief so beautifully that even the pastor was moved. I stood at the back of that hall, in a headscarf and dark glasses, and I watched them bury an empty coffin with my name on it. My name is Amaka, and 3 weeks before that day, my husband tried to have me killed for my money. He failed, but he does not know that yet. Look at him, Obina, my husband. See how the tears fall right on cue, how his shoulders shake for the cameras. Beside him, his mother, dressed in the finest black lace money could buy. My money. And there, holding his hand a little too tenderly, my best friend of 15 years, Ngozi. The 3 people I trusted most in this world gathered to mourn a woman they believed they had erased. I almost admired the performance. Almost. Because I knew what they were really waiting for. Not my body, but the reading of my will in 40 days. That was the day they expected to become rich. That was the day I planned to come back from the dead. I did shed one tear that day. Not for the lie they were burying, for the woman I used to be. The one who believed that love was safe, that a husband who held your hand at your father's grave would never dig yours. In my fist, I held the only thing I took with me the night everything changed. My late father's gold pen. The pen he used to sign his first contract 40 years ago, when he had nothing. Amaka, he always told me. A signature can build an empire, or end one. He had no idea how right he was. Because in 40 days, I would use that same pen to end everything they had stolen. But let me take you back. Because to understand how I ended up at my own funeral, you have to understand what they wanted. Money. Not a little, a lot. I was not born rich. I built it. Brick by brick, deal by deal. I turned my father's small trading business into one of the largest logistics companies in the country. By 35, I had done what most only dream of, and I had done it mostly alone. My husband liked the houses and the cars my success bought. What he did not like, I would learn too late, was that all of it, every naira, was in my name. They say you never see betrayal from the people closest to you, because you are standing too near to notice them sharpening the knife. For 12 years, I saw Obina as my partner. For 15, I saw Ngozi as the sister I never had, my best friend, and later, the personal assistant I trusted with my calendar, my accounts, my secrets. I gave them everything. Access, trust, my whole life, laid open like a book. And somewhere in those pages, the 2 of them found each other and decided that the only thing standing between them and my fortune was me. The first crack appeared on an ordinary night. I had come home early from a trip that was cancelled, and through the door of my own study, I heard my husband's voice, low and urgent, and then a laugh I knew better than my own, Ngozi's. It was nothing, I told myself. Friends talk. But a wife knows the difference between a conversation and a secret. That night, for the first time in 12 years, I did not knock on my own study door. I stood outside it, in the dark, and I listened. And what I heard began to unmake everything I thought was true. It had not always been a lie. When Obina married me, I was not yet rich. We had a small flat, 1 car we shared, and a love that felt like the safest place I had ever known. He used to say he married me for my mind, not my money, because back then, there was no money. And for years, I believed that man still lived inside the one who now shared my bed. That is the cruelest part of betrayal. It does not arrive as a stranger. It wears the face of the person you would have died for. The money changed him slowly, the way water wears down stone. As my company grew, Obinna shrank. He had a small job he rarely went to. He wanted to be seen as the man of the house, but the house, and everything in it, had my name on the papers. I did not rub it in. I gave him cards, cars, a seat at every table. But a proud man does not want to be given his kingdom by his wife. He wants to take it. And a man who cannot take it honestly will find another way. I just never imagined the other way was a grave. So I listened that night, outside my own study. And I heard my husband say the words that ended my old life. "Once it's done," he said, "everything transfers to me. The houses, the company, the accounts. We just have to make it look like an accident." And then Ngozi's voice, my best friend's voice, soft as silk. And then it's finally just us. I did not gasp. I did not cry out. 15 years of friendship, 12 years of marriage collapsed into a single, silent second. I backed away from that door, walked to the guest room, locked it, and sat in the dark, listening to my own heartbeat, understanding for the first time that the two people I loved most were planning to kill me. Do you know what happens inside you when love turns out to be a weapon? First, you refuse to believe it. I told myself I had misheard, that it was a joke, a business deal, anything but what it was. But I am my father's daughter. He taught me to look at hard truths without blinking. So I sat in that dark room and I forced myself to say it out loud. My husband and my best friend are going to murder me for my money. And the moment I said it, the fear turned into something else. Something colder. Something clearer. Because a frightened woman runs. But a woman who has already died inside, she plans. The next morning, I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I smiled at him. I poured his tea. I laughed at his joke. I kissed his cheek and told him to have a good day. Because I understood something in the night. If I confronted them, I would simply be warning them. They would deny it, wait, and try again in a way I would not see coming. No. If they wanted to believe I suspected nothing, then I would become the best actress in the country. I would smile and love and trust. And underneath, I would build the trap that would one day swallow them whole. I began quietly to gather. I'm a businesswoman. Evidence is my language. Over the next days, I said nothing, changed nothing they could see. But at night, alone, I started to build my file. I needed 3 things: proof of the affair, proof of the plot, and a way to put every naira I owned somewhere their hands could never reach. I had built this empire once from nothing. Now I would have to hide it in plain sight from the 2 people who knew my business better than anyone alive. It was the most dangerous deal of my life. And I was negotiating it against people who wanted me dead. Proof of the affair came easily, once I let myself see. I had spent years not looking. Now I looked. A hotel receipt Ngozi filed under office supplies. 2 coffee cups where there should have been 1. The way his phone now slept face down. One afternoon, I sat in a parked car across the street and watched my husband and my best friend share a table, and a laugh, and a touch that no friendship survives. It did not break my heart. My heart was already broken. It simply confirmed what I now knew. The woman I had trusted with my secrets have been trading them all along for my life.
And then there was his mother.
Mama Obina had never liked that her son's wealth came from his wife. I overheard her one afternoon in her own parlour, and her words told me this was bigger than an affair. "Once the wife is gone," she said, "everything is yours, my son. Just make sure the papers are ready. And that girl, Ngozi, get rid of her too when the money is safe." So even the mistress was disposable. This was not passion. It was a business plan, and I was the asset they intended to liquidate. Strangely, that made it easier. You can mourn a marriage, but a business plan? A business plan, you simply out-negotiate. I needed one person I could trust completely, and I chose the one man who had never wanted anything from me but the truth. My father's old lawyer, Barrister Okafor. I told him everything, in his quiet office with the blinds drawn. He did not gasp or pity me. He simply took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly, and said, "Then we will make sure that if anything happens to you, Amaka, the only thing they inherit is prison." That was the day my grief became a plan. And the plan had a shape now. If they wanted me dead to get my money, then I would make sure that my death gave them nothing at all. That night, I lay beside the man who was planning my murder, and I did not sleep. I watched the ceiling, and I made him a silent promise. "You wanted my death to make you rich," I thought. "So I will give you a death. But it will be the most expensive death of your life." I did not yet know they would strike so soon. I thought I had weeks. I had days. Because while I was building my quiet trap, Obina and Ngozi had already chosen the night, the road, and the car. And the car they chose was mine. It happened on a Friday. Obina was unusually sweet that evening. He suggested I drive up to our country house for the weekend, alone, to rest. "You work too hard," he said, kissing my forehead, pressing the keys into my hand. "Take the car. Sunday will follow tomorrow with the bags." I remember thinking how gentle he was. I did not yet know that gentleness was the last gift a man gives the person he is about to kill. But someone else knew. Sunday, our old driver, watched Obina hand me those keys, and something in the old man's face went tight and afraid. As I reached the car, Sunday did something he had never done in 10 years of service. He touched my arm. "Madam," he whispered, his eyes darting to the house. "Please, do not drive that car tonight." This afternoon, a man came. He was under it for a long time. Oga Obina said he was fixing the brakes, but madam, the brakes were not broken this morning. I drove it myself. My whole body went cold. Sunday, this quiet old man who had never spoken out of turn was risking everything to warn me. In that instant, I understood. Tonight was the night. And the accident they had planned was already waiting inside my own car. Here is what most people would do. Run into the house screaming or call the police. But I had learned, standing outside that study door, that warning your enemy only buys you a slower death. If I refused to drive, they would know I knew. They would try again in a way Sunday could not see. So I made a decision that still frightens me. I would let them think their plan had worked. I started the car. I waved at my husband, standing in the doorway of the house I built, watching me leave with a smile on his face. And I drove, slowly, toward the one road where I knew I could control what happened next. I did not go far. Sunday, God bless that faithful man, followed me on his old motorbike. At a lonely bend in the road, near a steep slope down to the river, I stopped. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. If they wanted an accident, I would give the world an accident, on my terms, with no one inside it. Sunday and I released the handbrake, and together we let that beautiful, sabotaged car roll off the bend, tumbling down the slope, crashing into the rocks and the water below, burning. From the road, it looked exactly like a woman had lost control and died. That was the point. We stood at the top of that slope in the dark, watching the fire, and I felt something I cannot fully explain. I was watching my own death. Everything Amaka had been, the wife, the friend, the trusting woman, was burning in that wreck. Sunday wept quietly beside me. "Madam," he said, "what do we do now?" And I looked at the flames reflecting on the river, and I heard my father's voice in my head. A signature can build an empire, or end one. "Now, Sunday," I said, "the world is going to believe I am dead, and we are going to let them. Because a dead woman can see everything the living try to hide." Sunday took me to the last place anyone would look for a wealthy woman. His own small house in a poor quarter of the city, where he lived with his memories and his faith. It had one bed, a tin roof, and more kindness than the mansion I had left behind. That first night, I lay awake in a stranger's home, a dead woman with no name, and I let myself cry. Finally, fully, for everything I had lost. And then, before dawn, I stopped. Because grief is a luxury, and I could not afford it yet. I had 40 days. 40 days until they read my will and reached for my fortune. 40 days to build the trap that would catch them all. The news broke the next morning. Tragic accident. Prominent businesswoman feared dead. Car recovered from the river, burned beyond recognition. I watched it all from a small phone in Sunday's house. I watched my husband give a tearful interview about his beloved wife. I watched Ngozi, my grieving best friend, wipe her eyes for the cameras. And I watched something they thought no one could see. The moment the reporters left, and the three of them allowed themselves to smile. That smile. I will never forget that smile. It was the smile of people who believed they had gotten away with murder. They had no idea they had only performed for their own trial. And so began the strangest weeks of my life. I became invisible. A woman in a plain wrapper and a headscarf, moving through the city that had once known my name and now believed me buried. There is a terrible freedom in being thought dead. No one looks at you. No one suspects you. I could stand 3 feet from people who had known me for years, and they saw only a poor stranger. I used that freedom like a blade. I watched my enemies. I followed the money, and piece by piece, I began to gather the proof that would turn my funeral into their downfall. Sunday became my eyes inside the mansion. He still had his job, still drove for Obina, who never suspected the old driver had saved the woman he tried to kill. Every evening, Sunday brought me pieces. Who visited? What was said? And most importantly, the mechanic. Because a plan like theirs always leaves a loose thread, and I had found it. The man they paid to cut my brakes. A frightened young mechanic named Amaka, who had done a terrible thing for money and had not slept since. If I could reach him before they silenced him, I would have the one thing that turns an accident into a murder. A witness. I found Amaka in his workshop, jumping at every shadow. I did not threaten him. I simply lifted my dark glasses just for a moment and let him see the face of the dead woman he had helped to kill. He nearly fainted. And then, because guilt is heavier than fear, He told me everything, through tears. How Obina had paid him, what he had cut and when. He had even kept the payment records and a voice note out of terror in case they came for him next.
"I didn't want to, madam,"
he wept.
"They said no one would get hurt."
I put my hand on his shoulder. "You are going to help me make it right," I said. "And this time, no one will get hurt. Except the guilty." With Amika's confession safe, I turned to the second half of the trap, the money. I met Barrister Okafor in secret after dark. He had been busy. "Amaka," he said, spreading the papers before me. "As far as the world knows, you are dead. Which means your old will is about to be read, the one that leaves everything to your husband." He looked at me over his glasses. "So the question is simple. Do you want them to inherit an empire or an empty box?" I picked up my father's gold pen, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. "An empty box, Barrister," I said. "Let us give them a beautiful, empty box." Over the following days, quietly and legally, I began to move. My father had built our fortune with careful structures, trusts, holding companies, foundations, and I knew every door in that maze. One by one, I moved the true ownership of everything I had built out of the reach of the will they were waiting to read. The company, the properties, the accounts. On paper, Amaka, the wife, would die owning almost nothing. But the empire itself, safe in a new structure only Okafor and I controlled, would keep breathing, waiting for a dead woman to come back and claim it. Meanwhile, in the house I built, they had stopped pretending. Sunday told me everything, and sometimes I saw it myself, watching from a distance. Ngozi had moved into my bedroom. My husband draped my dead mother's jewelry around his mistress's neck. They threw parties in my parlour, drank from my glasses, and laughed about how easy it had been. They were so certain the will would make it all legally theirs in 40 days. They were spending an inheritance they did not yet have, and would never get. There is an old proverb my father loved. The goat that celebrates too early does not know it is being fattened for the feast. I will be honest with you. Watching Ngozi wear my life was the hardest part. Not the money, the friendship. 15 years. She had held my hand when my father died. She had been my bridesmaid. I had paid for her mother's surgery, put her brothers through school, made her my right hand. And she had repaid every kindness by climbing into my husband's arms and my husband's plot. Betrayal by a stranger is a wound. Betrayal by a sister is an amputation. But even that I turned into fuel. Because the more comfortable they became in my life, the harder they would fall when the dead woman walked back into it. Mama Obina moved in too, ruling my home like a queen who had finally won a long war. She fired my loyal staff and hired her own. She sold 2 of my cars before I was even buried, pocketing the cash. Only Sunday, humble Sunday, she kept, because a driver was useful, and she never once imagined that the quiet old man opening her doors was the reason her whole world was about to end. They looked at Sunday and saw a servant. I looked at Sunday and saw the most loyal man in Nigeria. That is the difference between people who value others by their power and people who value them by their heart. They announced a grand memorial. 40 days after the accident, a lavish service in the biggest church in the city followed the next morning by the reading of the will in Barrister Okafor's chambers. Obina spared no expense, with my money. He wanted the whole city to see the grieving husband, so that no one would ever question the fortune he was about to inherit. He was building the perfect stage. He did not know he was building it for me, because I had already decided I would not send a letter or make a phone call. I would come back the way the guilty least expect the dead to return. In person, in public, on the day they reached for everything.
In Sunday's small house, I assembled it all like a general before a battle.
Amaka's confession and the payment records, proof of the murder plot. Okafor's documents, proof that the empire was legally beyond their reach. Photographs and receipts, proof of the affair. And one more thing, a deep red dress hanging on the wall, waiting. Not black, the colour of the mourning I was supposed to be. Red, the colour of blood, and of a woman who refuses to stay buried. On the 40th day, I would put on that dress, and I would walk into my own funeral, and give 3 murderers the one thing they never planned for: a witness who came back from the grave. The night before, Sunday grew afraid for me. "Madam," he said, "these are dangerous people. When they see you alive, what if they do something? In front of everyone?" I held his old, faithful hands. "Sunday," I said, "that is exactly why it must be in front of everyone. They cannot kill a woman a whole city is staring at, and they cannot deny the truth once it is spoken in the light. I died in the dark, alone, because I trusted the wrong people. I will come back in the light, in public, protected by the eyes of strangers." He nodded slowly, and then he said something that steadied me. "Your father would be proud, madam. You did not become like them. You stayed yourself." I barely slept. Before dawn, I sat before Sunday's small, cracked mirror, and I began to become myself again. For weeks, I had been no one. A headscarf, a shadow, a dead woman. Now, slowly, I took it off. I looked at my own face in that dim light, and I did not see a victim. I saw my father's daughter. A woman who had built an empire from nothing and had just outplanned the 3 people who tried to erase her. Whatever happened in that church, I had already won the only battle that mattered. They had tried to make me disappear, and I had refused. I was still here, and in a few hours, everyone would know it.
I put on the red dress. I pinned up my hair.
I slid my father's gold pen into my bag, beside the folder that would end them. And when I looked in the mirror one last time, the frightened woman from the dark study door was gone. In her place stood someone new. Someone they had accidentally created. You see, they thought that killing Amaka the wife would leave them free. Instead, it had freed her. The soft, trusting woman had died in that burning car by the river. The woman putting on red was harder, clearer, and completely done being afraid. "All right," I said to my reflection. "Let us go to my funeral."
The church was overflowing. Half the city had come. Business leaders, old friends, strangers who had only read my name in the news. Obina had truly built a spectacle. As I stepped out of Sunday's old car at the edge of the crowd, still in my headscarf for now, I looked up at the enormous banner of my own smiling face above the doors, and I felt strangely calm. Somewhere inside, my husband was preparing to weep for the cameras one last time. My best friend was preparing to comfort him. My mother-in-law was preparing to inherit a kingdom. And none of them knew that the guest of honor had just arrived, breathing. I slipped in at the back, in my headscarf, and I listened to my husband deliver my eulogy. He was magnificent. He spoke of my kindness, my brilliance, how empty his life was without me. People wept. Ngozi in the front row dabbed her eyes. Mama Obina nodded solemnly. And I stood at the back, invisible, and let him finish every beautiful, lying word. I wanted him to reach the very top of his performance, to feel completely safe, completely victorious, before I pulled the ground out from under him. My father taught me that too. Never interrupt your enemy while he is busy building the stage for his own downfall.
And then he finished. "Rest well, my love," Obina said, pressing his hand to my portrait, and the church filled with weeping and soft applause. The pastor rose to close the service. This was the moment. This was the top of the mountain. I reached up and I pulled the headscarf from my head, letting it fall to the marble floor. And in my red dress, I began to walk, slowly, steadily, straight up the center aisle, toward the front, toward the man who had killed me. One by one, heads began to turn. A murmur started, then a gasp, then a wave of shock rolling forward through the crowd like wind through grass. I watched the news travel up the aisle ahead of me, face by stunned face, until it reached the front row. Ngozi turned first. She saw me, and the color drained from her skin like water from a cracked cup. Then Mama Obina, whose mouth fell open, her hand flying to her chest. And finally, Obina. My husband turned from my portrait to see the living woman walking toward him in red, and I watched 12 years of lies shatter across his face in a single second. The grief melted into confusion, the confusion into disbelief, and the disbelief into something I had waited 40 days to see. Raw, undiluted terror. "Hello, my love," I said into the silence. I heard there was a funeral, so I came. The church had gone completely silent. 1,000 eyes moved between a giant photograph of the dead woman and the living one standing beneath it in red. Obina's mouth opened and closed like a drowning man's. Amaka?" he finally choked. You're alive?" I let the silence stretch, so every person in that hall could see his face. "Yes," I said, calm and clear, my voice carrying to the last row. "I am alive, Obina, which must be very disappointing. After all, you paid a great deal of money to make sure I wasn't." The gasp that went through that church was like a wave hitting rocks. Obina's hands flew up. That's a lie! I don't know what you're clearly not well, my love. The trauma, I repeated, and I almost laughed. "Let us talk about the trauma, Obina. Let us talk about the man you paid to cut the brakes on my car. Let us talk about the night you handed me the keys, kissed my forehead, and sent me out to die." I turned, slowly, to face the horrified crowd. "My husband did not lose his wife in an accident," I said. "My husband tried to murder her. And I can prove every word." I raised my hand, and two things happened at once. From the side aisle, young Amaka the mechanic stepped forward, trembling but resolute, ready to testify to the money he took and the brakes he cut. And from the back, Barrister Okafor rose, holding the folder, the payment records, the voice notes, the evidence. At the doors, quietly, 3 police officers I had arranged took their positions. "This is Amaka," I said. "Your husband paid him to kill me. He kept the receipts. He kept your voice, Obina. And the police have heard all of it this morning." Obina's legs nearly gave way beneath him, but I was not finished. I turned to the woman in the front row, the one who had been my sister for 15 years. "And you, Ngozi," I said softly, and the whole church leaned in. "My best friend. The one I trusted with my home, my accounts, my secrets. Tell them. Tell all these people whose bed you have been sleeping in since the day they thought I burned.
Tell them whose jewelry is around your neck right now." Every eye fell on the necklace, my mother's necklace, glittering at Ngozi's throat. She grabbed at it as if she could hide it, and in that one guilty motion, she confessed to 1,000 people without saying a single word. And then, as guilty people always do when the ground opens, they turned on each other. "It was his idea!" Ngozi screamed, pointing at Obina. "He planned everything! I only—" "Shut your mouth!" Obina roared. "You were the one who said we should—" He stopped, but it was too late. In front of the entire city, in the house of God, my husband and my best friend had just confessed to my murder by blaming each other for it. I did not have to say another word. I simply stood in my red dress and let the two of them tear each other apart with the truth, the way they had once torn apart my life. Mama Obina tried to slip out the side door. She had spent my money, sold my cars, worn my success like a crown, and now she gathered her expensive lace and moved for the exit. A police officer stepped gently into her path. "Madam," he said, "we will need to speak with you about the assets you have been selling, and about a conversation you had with your son." She had plotted in her own parlor, certain no one was listening, but someone always is. The quiet driver, the dead wife, the god she was standing beneath. The greedy do not fall because the world is cruel. They fall because they believe no one is watching. The police did not have to force anything. The confession had already happened, in front of 1,000 witnesses and a dozen cameras. They led my husband and my best friend down the same aisle I had walked up, in handcuffs now, past the very people who an hour ago had wept for my death. Obina looked at me as he passed, and there was no love left in that look. Only the shock of a man who had finally met someone he could not outlie. I did not gloat. I did not smile. I simply watched the two people I had loved most in the world be carried out by the weight of what they had chosen. It was not joy I felt. It was something quieter. It was over. The next morning, the will was still read, exactly as scheduled, but in a very different room than they had imagined. What was left of Obina's family gathered in Okafor's chambers, expecting to divide my empire. Instead, they found me sitting at the head of the table, alive, with my father's gold pen in my hand. Okafor cleared his throat and read the truth into the record. That every asset they had been counting on had, weeks before, been lawfully moved beyond their reach. "The estate the accused hoped to inherit," he said, "no longer exists in the form they believed. They conspired to murder a woman for an empire that was never going to be theirs. They had killed me, as they thought, for money. And in the end, that was the cruelest joke of all. There was no money for them, not 1 naira. They had traded their souls, their freedom, and my love for an empty box wrapped in gold paper." I sat there with my father's pen in my hand, and I thought of his words. A signature can build an empire or end one. With this same pen, my father had built our fortune from nothing. With this same pen, I had saved it from thieves who tried to spill my blood to get it. Some inheritances are not money. Some are the wisdom to know exactly who you are dealing with. But there was one more thing to do. The most important thing. I called Sunday into that office, the humble old driver who had risked his life to save mine, who had hidden a dead woman in his one-room house and asked for nothing. In front of Okafor, I placed a set of documents in his weathered hands. "Sunday," I said, "the country house, the one they wanted me to die driving to, is yours now. And a position with a salary for as long as you live.
You were the only one in my life who valued me when I could do nothing for you." He wept like a child, and I understood in that moment that I had lost a husband and a best friend, but I had never truly been alone.
Weeks later, I did something that surprised even me. I went to see Obina once in prison. Not for him, for me. He was thinner, grey, all the charm burned out of him. He would not meet my eyes. "Why did you come?" he whispered. I looked at the man I had once loved with my whole heart, and I felt no hatred left, only a great, calm sadness. "I came to tell you that I forgive you," I said. "Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry you inside me for one more day. You wanted my death. Instead, you gave me my freedom. So thank you, Obina. And goodbye." I stood and I walked out into the sunlight, and I never looked back. I went back to my life, my real life. I walked into my company, the one they thought they had inherited, and my staff, who had mourned me, wept all over again to see me alive. I took my seat at the head of the table, my father's pen in my hand, and I built again. Bigger, wiser, and without illusions. They had tried to bury me, but you cannot bury a woman who knows who she is. You only plant her. And a planted woman does one thing. She grows back, stronger, with roots too deep for any thief to ever reach again. Sometimes at the end of a long day, I visit my father's grave. I tell him everything. I tell him that his little girl attended her own funeral and walked out alive. That the pen he gave me ended the empire of the people who tried to end me. And I tell him the lesson I paid so dearly to learn, the one I want to leave with you. Be careful who you trust with the keys to your life. Not everyone who holds your hand is holding you up. Some are just measuring where to let you fall. They called me many things after that day. The woman who rose from the dead, the wife who buried her own murderers. But I am none of those things. I am simply a woman who was betrayed by everyone she loved and chose, in the end, not to become like them. I could have paid someone to hurt them, the way they paid to hurt me. I did not. I let the truth do what the truth always does, if you are patient enough to survive long enough to tell it. I did not win because I was cruel. I won because I stayed myself. So let me ask you what I have asked myself every day since. When the people you love most become the people who hurt you most, what do you become? Do you become like them and let the poison win? Or do you do the harder thing and stay yourself, even when staying yourself costs you everything? I made my choice at my own funeral. I would love to know what you would have done. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Would you have forgiven a husband who tried to kill you? Or would you have let him rot without a single word of mercy? And who in your own life would you trust with the keys, the way I once trusted the wrong people? Thank you for walking through this with me, all the way from a funeral to a new beginning. If you made it here, do one thing for me. Never let anyone convince you that you are easy to bury. Now, go live like the person they could not erase.